Hello everyone, welcome to Hauntings and History, the show where we discuss hauntings and the histories behind them. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Kimberly Club, Kimberly. We'd been bouncing around stages of load shedding all week, and I wasn't about to risk missing the 2023 Rugby World Cup final because Eskom couldn't keep the lights on. So I did what any desperate rugby-mad South African would do. I made a booking at the Kimberly Club. They had a generator, good whiskey, and a big screen that was good enough for me. By the time Khaleesi lifted that trophy, the place erupted. Strangers hugged like family, beer sloshed over the tables, and the echoes of Shozholoza mixed with Springbok jerseys and warm victory tears. We'd done it. Back-to-back Rugby World Cup champions. The pride in that room could have lit up the Karoo. At some point between the third round of Springbokkies and someone singing Ikomi Boko, the conversation shifted to ghost stories, as it often does in old places like this. One of the bartenders, a quiet guy with a kind voice that sounds better after midnight, leaned in and told us about the waiter. He worked there over a century ago, the story went. No one remembers exactly how he died. Some say it was illness, others says it was something darker. But since then, his spirit has never left the club. Guests still spot him near the bar, a shadow in a waistcoat and apron, gliding silently between tables. Glasses tip over for no reason, doors creak open, and sometimes in the hush of midnight you'll hear the faint sound of cutlery clinking on tables that were cleaned hours ago. Others in the bar chimed in. One woman claimed her father had seen a figure reflected in the bar mirror behind him, only to turn and find that there was no one there. Another regular swore that he'd heard whispers in the lounge when he stayed too late one night. It's always worse when there's been a lot of celebrating, someone said, jokingly. Still, it was hardly the highlight of the night. We'd just beaten New Zealand in a Rugby World Cup final, and I definitely had one too many to make it home. So I took a room in the guest house section of the club. It felt like the smart, responsible thing to do. But that room, from the moment I walked in, it was like stepping into another era. High ceilings, creaky floors, and furniture that whispered from another century. The kind of place where you lie down and instinctively fold your hands across your chest, like you're part of the decor. In the quiet of the early hours, after the cheering had faded and the whiskey had worn off, I woke to a strange chill, the kind that doesn't just touch your skin, but settles in your chest. I heard what sounded like footsteps outside my door, then a soft knock. The next morning, the sun cut through the curtains like a spotlight on a stage. The hall was empty. No one else had heard a thing. I went to go check out and asked the receptionist about what happened last night. It happens sometimes, she said with a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. The building remembers things, and the Kimberly Club remembers a lot. Founded in 1881, it wasn't just a club, it was a citadel of colonial power. The kind of place where Cecil Rhodes and Barney Bernardo and other empire men came to unwind and scheme. It survived 2 fires, a siege during the Anglo-Boer War, and even hosted royalty. It's seen war, wealth, and ruin. Is it really that hard to believe that it might have held on to a spirit or two? Maybe the waiter's still working his nightly rounds. Maybe the club itself doesn't want to be forgotten. Or maybe it's just the whiskey and the afterglow of victory. Whatever it was, one thing's for sure. That night at the Kimberly Club, I got more than I bargained for. Random bar, Culloden Street, Kariga. I was sitting in a random bar in Kariga one Friday after work. It wasn't exactly a high-end place, just a dive tucked away in central Kariga. The kind of place where people gamble away their weekly wages on slot machines that beep and flash like they're promising miracles. Most of the clientele were older men, some clearly day laborers. Others just lingered in the comfort of routine and cheap beer. Honestly, I only went there because it was close to work. The owner's daughter wasn't bad looking either. She worked behind the bar, and that alone made the place more interesting. I knocked back beer after beer, slowly taking in the strange character of the building. It was definitely old. The door frames were oddly sized, like they seemed to be custom built for people who didn't care about symmetry. Thick, dark, stained wooden beams framed the ceiling. Oak maybe, or something similar. And everything had that worn British colonial feel. I remember thinking to myself, wow, this place has seen things. Half jokingly, I asked the owner's daughter if this place is haunted by any chance. Without missing a beat, she said, "Actually, yes. I see shadows in the corners of my eyes all the time when no one else is around." She went on to say that the building used to be some kind of slaver's house. That made me raise an eyebrow. I mean, sure, this place is old, but slavery was abolished in 1807. Utenake was developed in 1804, so it didn't seem likely. Don't get me wrong, this building is ancient by local standards, but I wasn't convinced it dated back far enough to have held enslaved people there. Anyway, the beers kept flowing and eventually the other bar lady who'd been eavesdropping leaned in over the counter to share a ghost story of her own. Now, I'll admit, by this point I was squinting at my phone with one eye closed, so the details are a little bit fuzzy. But what she said chilled me enough that I still remember it. Apparently, she used to have a Xhosa domestic worker. One day, the bar lady noticed jewelry missing and accused the woman of stealing it. Deeply offended, the domestic worker gathered her things, grabbed something from the rubbish bin outside and stormed off, never to be seen again. A few days later, strange things started happening at the bar lady's house. She heard footsteps coming down the hallway when she was sitting alone in the living room. There were growling sounds coming from her kitchen, and once she was in the bathroom, a towel flew off the rack at her. Her phone, sitting flat on a table, suddenly launched across the room with no logical explanation. The thing, whatever it was, began to mimic her family. She would hear her husband whistling or her son calling for her, only to realize they weren't home. Her husband reported the same thing. He'd hear her voice when she wasn't there. Even the cat started to act strange. One would rub up against empty air as though being petted, and the other would meow at the corners of the room like something was staring back. It all escalated until one afternoon. After heavy spring rains, her husband climbed onto the roof to clear out the gutters. Then he found it. Nestled among the wet leaves was what he thought was a drowned mouse. But when he picked it up, it turned out to be a bundle of hair and nail clippings tied together with string. The hair was unmistakably his wife's hair. They were rattled but took it to a place downtown called Amadodola, a shop known for selling sangoma supplies, charmed soaps, and other traditional spiritual items. The owner took one look at the bundle and asked wide-eyed, "What did you do to who?" When she explained how she'd found it and the strange events that followed, he told her flat out someone with ill intent had placed that item there. Anything containing a person's DNA, hair, nails, even personal belongings can be used to create a spiritual link. Through that link, dark energy or demonic entities can be summoned to torment the person. The theory? The domestic worker had taken the hair from the hairbrush and some nail clippings from the bin, and after being wrongfully accused, had taken it to a sangoma to cast a revenge curse. The sangoma's advice was simple but urgent. Wrap the bundle up in white cloth, completely cover it with sea salt, and leave it untouched for a few days. Then bury it far away from their home, somewhere quiet and safe. After they followed his instructions, the strange activity gradually stopped, but the psychological scars, those lingered. The Perseverance Tavern, Cape Town. I picked up a summer bartending job at the Perseverance Tavern in Cape Town during my varsity break. It was one of the few places still hiring over the holidays, and I figured working in South Africa's oldest pub would make for an interesting story, or at least good tips. It's tucked away on Buitekant Street in Cape Town, across from the Iziko Rust en Vreugd, and it's been standing there since 1808. The building has that old colonial feel. Worn wooden floors, stone walls, and a bar counter made from repurposed wine casks. The kind of place where the history seems to cling to everything, even the beer glasses. During the day, the tavern was lively, especially when the kitchen started serving up food. They did these huge plates of icepine and mash with sauerkraut that the regulars swore by. At night though, when things quieted down and the last tables emptied out, the atmosphere shifted. Some staff joked about the place being haunted. The guide from the ghost tour bus would stop by every now and then and talk about the residual energy. I, not a believer, was skeptical at first. I thought it was just marketing or something to add to the building's character. But then strange things started happening. I'd hear footsteps from the back hallway when no one was there. One night while closing up, I caught the sound of glasses clinking softly behind me, like someone was having one last round. The bar was empty, and I checked it twice. Another time, I felt a sudden cold draft while drying cutlery near the courtyard entrance. It wasn't a breeze exactly, more like the temperature just dropped for a moment and then returned to normal. One of the other bartenders mentioned that people too often feel chills in that exact same spot. Though there was never anything dramatic, no floating objects or ghostly apparitions, just odd quiet moments. Things that made you stop and wonder. A sound that just didn't belong. A shift in the air. That kind of thing. By the time varsity started back up again, I'd grown pretty fond of the perseverance. Between the warm bowls of stew, the regulars chatting over pints, and the creaky floors, it had its own kind of magic. Haunted or not, it's the sort of place that sticks with you. I still don't know what to make of those nights, but I'll say this. Some places have memories, and sometimes they let you feel them. That's all the stories I have for you today. If you have enjoyed them, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any personal encounters, please feel free to share your stories in the comment section. Until next time, see you!